Elevate Talk Show. I am your host, Deanna Cauthen.
And I'm Adrianna Cauthen, your co-host, and we're the mother-daughter talk show team that's here to elevate your family. If you haven't done so already, please take a second to like this video and to subscribe to the Elevate Talk Show so that you don't miss any of our latest episodes.
Yes, and we have a great episode planned for you today. In our Around the Town segment, the Elevate Talk Show takes you to the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Had a great time up there. You definitely want to stay with us and share in our adventures. In our perspective segment, we're going to be continuing the discussion that we had last week based on the Facebook poll question about emotional abuse. Adrianna and I are going to be talking about a different aspect of that question. So stay tuned to hear our discussion. And then in our continuing the conversation, we're going to do part 2 of our interview with Dr. Billie Boyd-Cox, who is a pastor, a teacher, life coach. She's going to talk about emotional abuse, physical abuse, and the things that she does with her ministry to help women. So you absolutely do not want to miss that. Also, if you did not see part 1 of Dr. Boyd-Cox's interview, please go back to the previous episode, episode 23, and watch part 1 of that episode. You will truly be blessed. She has a lot of wonderful things to say. Adrianna, was there something else you want to tell us?
So we've got one more segment, our Meal of the Week segment, and I'll be teaching you how to make a delicious chicken zucchini alfredo dish, which is a great dish to make on a weeknight, and it's perfect for those of you who are craving Italian but trying to cut back on carbs.
Oh wow, that's terrific. Sounds delicious. It is delicious. We've had that meal many times before. So we've got a lot planned for you in the show. We need to take a little break, but don't go away because we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Elevate Talk Show. Now we're going to share with you our perspectives segment of the show. Adrianna, can you remind our audience about last week's Facebook question that we discussed?
Yes, so last week our question was, is emotional abuse automatic grounds for divorce? So the majority of people who took the poll said that emotional abuse is always grounds for divorce, and everyone who took the poll said that it is a grounds for divorce, at least in certain circumstances.
Absolutely, absolutely. We had a discussion around that question. Today, we want to go ahead and sort of move the discussion in a little bit of a different way. During my interview with Dr. Billie Boyd-Cox, who also weighs in on this question and on other aspects of emotional abuse, during the interview, I asked her this question. I asked her how well did she think the church at large, was doing when it came to helping women who are dealing with emotional abuse or even physical abuse. And I won't I'll let her share her opinions on that in the interview that will be coming up. But I would love to know what you think about that. How well do you think the church is doing, in your observation, with helping women who have physical or emotional abuse issues?
Well, I think there are definitely some Christians that take those matters very seriously, but I mean, I've definitely heard a lot of stories about women being pressured to stay in marriages with an abusive husband, there are a lot of Christians who just take certain passages really literally and say that you cannot get divorced unless one of the spouses has been having an affair. So if there's any other problems, any abuse, any emotional abuse, physical abuse, they're just expect the people to stick it out, and even if it's not healthy.
Wow. And I will say this. I will say that I actually agree with you. Although in my particular case, in my previous marriage where there was emotional abuse, and because he had issues with alcohol and drugs, I received a lot of support from my local church, from the local body of believers that I happened to be a member of at that time. I received support from my pastor, and I received the support for the most part from the church at large. They came alongside of me in a lot of practical, meaningful ways to help me through a very difficult time. I did feel like they believed me. And they wanted me and my children to be in a safe place, and they proved it by coming alongside me to help me with housing, to help me with purchasing a car, to help me find work, because at the time I was a stay-at-home mom when I got separated and divorced. So I literally was starting all over. So my personal experience has been one of support, but I know of way too many cases where the church has just turned a blind eye or gave pat answers to very complicated situations, which actually ended up making the problem worse, exacerbating the problem. Where they said, just, grin and bear it, God will take care of you, just like you said, misinterpreting the scriptures, because it's easier to just, not deal with it than to confront some of the harsh issues of emotional and physical abuse. So overall, I agree with you that the church has not done a very good job with this. And so those are our thoughts. We're getting ready to take a break, and then after that, we're going to come back and continue this conversation with part 2 of our interview with Dr. Billie Boyd-Cox. So we're going to take a break, but don't go away, because we'll be right back.
Show, and now we're going to move on to our next segment, which is continuing the conversation, where we continue the conversation we had in our perspective segment with a special guest.
Dr. Billie Boyd-Cox is our special guest. Actually, we are going to be doing part 2 of an interview that we started with her last week. For those of you who did not listen to last week's interview, let me introduce her again to you. Dr. Cox is the founder and lead pastor of Open Door Ministries International. She is the CEO of Beyond the Walls Coaching and Consulting, and she's also the author of several books. She's a certified life coach and a realtor. She previously served as the senior pastor at Macedonia Baptist Church in Conyers, Georgia. She was the first woman to serve as a pastor of a historic African American Baptist church in that county. And so we are going to be bringing you part 2 of our interview with Dr. Billie Boyd-Cox.
So please turn your attention to our interview with Dr. Billie Boyd-Cox.
Yes.
And you said something very critical as you get ready to go into your next question. You said, had you not taken the time.
Yes.
We don't know how to take time because we often know how to be alone.
Yes.
We don't alone. Now, for me, the way that I see men in relationship, men move quickly because it is time for them to be alone. They can leave you this week and Saturday you'll be with somebody else. But for us, we need time. We need to process.
Yes.
We need to heal. We need to look and see what caused all of this. For how did we get here? Take time to process. What do you want different in your next relationship? What do you believe in God for? How do you see yourself? And so that time is critical.
It is very critical.
Otherwise,
and you can't rush that. I mean, and it could be different amounts of time, different lengths of time for different people. For me, the time really was about 5 years, about 4, because we dated a year before we got married. So I was single a total of 5 years. But it was like I said, it was healing, and I needed that. I didn't need all the distractions of being in this relationship and then quitting that guy and being in the next one. So and I think you're right. People are afraid to be alone, but it's okay to be alone, because being alone is not necessarily being lonely. I had friends.
I
had friends, I had family, I had good relationships that I was in, accountability relationships, but I just wasn't connected to a man. And I needed not to be connected to a man.
And we need to be okay with not being connected, because that's not identity.
That's
And
exactly right.
there's a difference between being alone and being lonely.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And I discovered that, and that really helped me. So here, I have a question for you. If you had to give the church at large, a grade on how well they've done with dealing with abuse and women and their emotional pain, what grade would you give? I'm very curious to know that.
F.
Oh, okay.
F.
You just went there.
I
Wow.
went there, F, because I'm going to share a situation without a name.
Yeah.
I was serving at this one church, and I noticed that one of the head deacons, his wife was sitting in church with sunglasses.
Okay.
And in the wintertime, in the whatever time,
that's crazy.
I would go to speak to her and stuff, and she would shy down or whatever. And one day I just did her sunglasses like that, and she had a black. So I talked to the pastor, and I said, "Do you know that he's abusive to her?" And he said to me, "I can't tell that man what to do in his house."
Oh my! Was that his answer?
That was his answer.
That is horrific.
And so much stuff happens in the church from leadership down to the janitor. So much stuff in the church, and it happens to women, and women are not believed, and shepherds eating the sheep and praying the members, and so much stuff happens, and the woman is always the one who suffers. She's always the one who has to leave the church. I know pastors who have babies by and the women are ostracized, they're talked about, and the man is celebrated. They get an F from me. I don't care what denomination, they get an F because they do not handle and deal with our emotional pain. They don't even want to hear from us when it comes to something like this.
No. And only in recent times, and that's after they have been exposed, the situation, the church, the minister, have they come back after the fact and said, "Oh, okay, well, yeah, this did actually happen, and we're going to, make him accountable." But that's only recently, and that's too few and too far between across the board. White churches, Black churches, Catholics, Protestant, across the board, it's a problem.
It is. And what they mean when they're saying making them accountable, it's like we're going to talk to them and tap them on the hand and say, "Don't do that anymore." Give them another 9 months so we'll see who shows up pregnant.
Exactly. Which is,
see who's, and is the pastor abusive to his own wife? They don't address that. They don't. The wives got to stay home or cover up with much makeup so that it's not known. So I give them an F.
And unfortunately, I have to agree with you because like I said, it's not like it's just a church here or a church there, or even white churches or Black churches. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It really is the church at large. And it's such a shame. And I think that has been such a stumbling block for so many people, women and men, because if the church, who is supposed to be upholding righteousness and goodness and love and honesty, if they won't do right, why would I even want to bother with the establishment? And Absolutely. I think we see, I talk to young people a lot. I've got my own young people, and so many of them have walked away from the church. They see what's going on.
Oh, yeah. And they don't want that. That's why I was saying, I think that God is allowing the church, with what's going on with COVID, not that God calls COVID.
I know.
He is, just breaking down and allowing us to come back to our first love, because
he is.
We've got programmatic and performance oriented and stuff. And the church is supposed to be like a trauma center. It is a hospital. And we're supposed to be able to come in there and walk out differently. We're supposed to go in there and get and have and encounter the pain that we're coming from the world to get away from. And so, but the church has, in a lot of instances, the church as a whole has failed society. And I understand when people look at it and say, "I don't want any parts of that," because I can in the streets and get better treatment.
Wow. And that's exactly right. And so this leads me to my last question. What are some specific things that maybe come to mind that the church and other faith-based ministries can do to better meet the needs of women who are hurting, who are either from physical abuse, emotional abuse, just hurting?
They really need to have something set up for I'm going to call it a trauma center. They need to have a trauma center. They need to have, when people think of pastoral care, they think, let's go to the hospital and visit this person. Let's go by that house and take a cake or something. Pastoral care needs to be inclusive of dealing with trauma and the angst and the pains experience. It needs to be that kind of care and concern in the church. And not that the church is going to be the end all be all, but I ought to be able to feel safe when I go there. I ought to be able to be heard when I go there. I should be able to contact somebody because I should be able to reach out to somebody and say, hey, I'm hurting. This is what's going on. Know, first of all, that it's going to be confidential. And then should be pointed, because the church doesn't have to have all the resources. But the church ought to have a resource database that it can say, hey, if you're in a domestic violence situation, I want to pray for you. I want to encourage you. I want to hear you, because the church has a problem listening.
Absolutely. I was going to say that.
A problem listening. Yeah. I want to hear you. I want to hear your side of the story, because sometimes in churches, the big thing is cover up so that the church name.
Absolutely.
Not,
Absolutely.
Have any fallout from it. So
exactly. You're right about that.
Cover off, snatch the cover.
And I will say this. You just everything you said was so good. I will say this for the church that I was at the time that I went through a divorce, and I'm grateful to God. It was one of the few places that did come alongside me. It was a small Presbyterian church here in Stone Mountain, and the church has since, that pastor has since left, and the church has actually turned over to someone else now. But for 22 years, I was there. That's where I met my husband. But during that time, when I went to my pastor, he did believe me. And I'm so grateful. And he was a, a white guy, but he did believe me. And he did meet with me and that current husband at the time. And he just said, I don't understand, why you won't cooperate with her. He was the one person that held him accountable. Of course, my ex-husband didn't want to see him anymore. But anyway, so I'm grateful for that, because that often I see now, and I've heard from other people, and even just listening to you today, that's often not the case. And they did come alongside. It wasn't perfect. I mean, there were little things that were said and done by others, but he himself, that pastor, did believe me and did say, you need to get out. And I'm so grateful, because often that does not happen. And like you said, women end up going to these people and receiving more trauma than they had originally.
And it's a very rare occurrance that you will kind of support, because it's not every church that you go to.
No, not most, actually. You have, talking to you has been just, it has just warmed my soul, and I think that others will be blessed by what you've shared today. I'm so grateful that you were able to take time out of your schedule and talk to us today. And I feel like there are other conversations we need to have. So I may reach out to you again, just so you know, give you a heads up. Thank you so much, Dr. Boyd-Cox. I appreciate your time, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. Take good care.
Bye-bye. Well, we hope you enjoyed that interview with Dr. Cox. Don't go away. We have more in store for you. We will be right back. Welcome back to our Around the Town segment, one of my favorite parts of the show. We will be taking you to the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Do you remember that trip, Adrianna?
Yes, I remember. We went with my nieces and nephews, and you and me and Dad went, and we had a great time. I don't know who was having more fun, the kids or the adults.
I know, it was great. I felt like a little kid in a candy store, although I was on a train, and it was great. It was just a wonderful experience. So join us as we take a trip up the road to the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum. This week's Around the Town takes us 2 hours north of Atlanta to the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum in Chattanooga, Tennessee. My husband and I, along with our daughter and 3 grandkids, visited there a few years ago, and we were transported back in time. Shortly after we arrived, we made our way over to the Grand Junction Railroad Station and went inside the waiting room to purchase our tickets. While we waited for the train to come, we toured the museum that's housed inside the station. We even had a chance to pose for some family pictures outside. In the distance, we could see the train coming down the track, and our excitement began to build as the train engineer pulled the train into the station. As it came to a stop, the conductor instructed the previous passengers to disembark, and we were finally able to board the train. We took our seats and prepared ourselves for the adventure ahead. The Tennessee Valley Railroad offers a variety of train rides, including the trip we took on the Missionary Ridge Local, which began at the Grand Junction Station in East Chattanooga. The trip, which took us over 4 bridges and through the pre-Civil War Missionary Ridge Tunnel, lasted 55 minutes and included a turntable demonstration and a brief tour of the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum Restoration Shop. Riding the vintage trains allowed us an opportunity to relive the romance of the rails when vintage trains provided an escape from the everyday routine. It was not only entertaining but educational and gave both young and old an opportunity to experience the sights and sounds of yesteryear. For more information about the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum, visit www.tvrail.com. Well, we hope you enjoyed our trip to the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum. We're going to take another little break, but don't go away. We'll be right back.
Talk show, and now we're going to do our Meal of the Week segment, and this week I'm going to be teaching you how to make a delicious chicken zucchini alfredo dish.
That's right, because no matter what, we all got to eat, right?
Yeah, we do.
And so eating made easy, right?
Yes, definitely.
That's right, because it's all about cooking good meals, but they need to be easy and quick because we're all so busy. So take a look at this week's Meal of the Week.
Today we're going to make a really nice recipe. We're going to be making chicken and zucchini alfredo. So let's get started. So I'm going to start off by cooking our chicken. So I have 3 chicken breasts right here that I have seasoned with salt, pepper, and garlic powder. And I'm going to stick them in a pan that has 2 tablespoons of oil in it. Our chicken is in the pan. And I'm just going to stir it around in the pan and flip it over so that all the sides can get cooked. So our chicken is fully cooked now, and I'm just going to transfer it. Okay, so now we're going to get started on the Alfredo sauce. So I'm going to start by adding half a cup of melted butter. So this would be equivalent to 1 stick of melted butter to a pot. Then I'm going to add 1 8-ounce package of cream cheese. So I'm just going to whisk this together until the cream cheese has broken up into nice small pieces and starts to melt. So I'm still stirring the cream cheese and the butter. I switched to using a spoon because that makes it easier to break up some of the large pieces of cream cheese. So here's what it's starting to look like now. It's starting to melt down and break into smaller pieces. So I'm going to finish stirring this, and then I'll show you. Okay, so the cream cheese is really coming along. It's really started to melt down and break into much smaller pieces. So now we're going to move on to the next step of the Alfredo sauce. I'm going to add in 6 cloves of minced fresh garlic. I'm just going to stir that around and okay, so now that the garlic is cooked for a few minutes, I'm going to add in 2 cups of milk. And I'm going to add in a cup of fresh Parmesan cheese, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, a teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. So I'm just going to stir all of those ingredients together. And then I'm going to allow the sauce to simmer and cook down for a few minutes. So our alfredo sauce has been cooking for a few minutes, and it's thickened up quite nicely, as you can see. So I'm just going to set this sauce to the side and cover it up, and then we're going to work on our zucchini, and after that we're going to put everything together. So now we're going to saute the zucchini. So I've melted 2 tablespoons of butter in this pan, and I'm just going to pour this zucchini right in. So we're just going to stir it in the butter until it's developed. Okay, so the zucchini has softened and it's really taken on a very nice golden brown color. And now I'm going to just put everything together and it'll all be done. So I'm going to pour in the sauce. Then I'll slip in our chicken. There we go. So now it's just... So here are our final results. Got a nice plate of chicken alfredo with zucchini. So I hope you enjoyed this recipe, and if you liked this video, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this week's Meal of the Week. We're going to take a little break, but don't go away because we will be back.
Welcome back to the Elevate Talk Show, and our time together is almost up. But before we go, we've got a couple of things we'd like to tell you. So we're doing a fundraiser to raise money for the National Alliance on Mental Illness to help support people who are struggling with mental illnesses and their families.
Yes.
If you want to learn more about how you can help support them, click the link below, and that will lead you straight to our fundraiser. And if you're watching on DeKalb25, go to our YouTube channel, The Elevate Talk Show, and click on this week's episode, and then you'll see the link to our fundraiser in the description.
Yes. Very good cause, and so follow the directions to the website, and it'll tell you more from there. Also, we want to remind you that the Elevate Talk Show puts out a new episode each week on our YouTube channel. So don't forget to join us on Sunday evenings for that. Also, you can watch or catch episodes of the Elevate Talk Show on Comcast Channel 25 if you live in DeKalb County, Georgia, or you can stream episodes of the Elevate Talk Show by going to DeKalb25.com and streaming it straight from the website there. So you can get us in a number of ways. So we just wanted to let you know about that.
Yes, so thank you for watching the Elevate Talk Show, and we can't wait to see you again next week.
Yes, have a great week.